So what happens when the world's greatest liar is just completely defeated by someone he has literally never met? Like someone who lives 10,000 kilometers away.
Right. Yeah. It's just a stunning psychological collapse. We're basically looking at a guy whose entire reality was built on this, incredibly complex web of deceit.
Yeah.
And he managed to successfully con his university, his family, multiple romantic partners, just operating with this absolute certainty that he was untouchable.
Wow. Yeah. So welcome to today's deep dive, customized just for you. We are pulling our insights today from a really fascinating, slightly clinical psychological analysis, simply titled Text.
Right. It's a great piece.
It really is. And our mission today is to kind of unpack the mechanics of this manipulator's downfall. We want to understand that wild contrast between face-to-face manipulation, where, emotion and charm kind of rule everything, and textual analysis.
Where data and timestamps just strip all of that away entirely. Yeah, the source material gives us this perfect laboratory for this. It's like a stress test of a pathology. Because this subject, he built a survival mechanism that was highly adapted to one very specific environment.
The physical room.
Exactly, the physical room. And when that environment is suddenly replaced by a digital text-based arena, his whole cognitive structure just short circuits.
It just completely falls apart. But to really appreciate that collapse, we kind of need to look at how he operated so successfully before this remote observer even stepped into the picture.
Right, because his track record was extensive.
Oh, it's wild. The sources lay it out, and he was fooling his university counselor, his own parents, and multiple romantic partners. The text specifically calls out these two individuals referred to as Big Boob Sister and 045.
Yeah.
He was just juggling all these people flawlessly.
Right, and juggling them requires this mechanism we call dynamic calibration.
Dynamic calibration.
Yeah, so his entire deception system relied heavily on the habit of face-to-face interaction. If you think about the granular mechanics of speaking to someone in person, it's this continuous rapid-fire feedback loop.
Like you speak, and before you even finish your sentence, you're getting data back.
Exactly. You see a slight tightening of the jaw, or, a shift in posture, a subtle crossing of the arms.
Those tiny micro expressions.
Right, and for a practice manipulator, that data is oxygen. He uses it to pivot in real time. Like, if he offers an excuse and registers even a flicker of skepticism in his partner's eyes, his brain instantly calculates a new trajectory.
He might just, suddenly deploy a highly specific detail to sound more credible.
Or if he senses anger building, he might strategically act wronged, performing vulnerability to trigger their empathy. Or if he feels really cornered, he pivots to strategic ambiguity, using his tone of voice to make a total non-answer sound super profound.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that means the lie isn't some static script he memorized beforehand. It's this living, breathing organism that he's basically editing line by line based on the audience's physical reaction.
Right. He is reading the emotional temperature of the room and adjusting the thermostat second by second.
Wow.
And that requires immense cognitive agility. But he's practiced it his whole life, so it's second nature.
Yeah.
But it relies entirely on immediate emotional data to keep that organism alive.
Which makes sense for individual interactions, but he still has to manage the overlap between all these people. So he basically built his relationships like these entirely separate towers of blocks with intentionally no connecting bridges between them. He practiced strict information flow control.
Giving every single circle only the exact piece of information they needed to stay pacified.
Exactly. It's a textbook compartmentalization strategy.
Yeah.
Like to his parents, the story was just that he was being pestered by an ex. To the partner, known as 045, his whole persona was built around innocent puppy love. And to the counselor, any issues or absences were just framed as a misunderstanding.
Everyone holds one single, carefully curated puzzle piece.
Yeah. His mom has no idea about 045 and 045, doesn't know about Big Boob Sister, and the counselor is totally blind to his real family structure.
Because that fragmentation is his armor. By keeping them isolated, he ensures their individual realities never collide.
Right. If they don't talk, stories don't intersect.
Exactly. He controls the data flow by physically controlling the spaces in which these interactions happen.
So, if his entire survival relies on reading the room and controlling physical space, his Achilles heel is pretty obvious. What happens if he literally can't see the room at all?
Which brings us to the catalyst of his destruction.
Yes, an international female student living 10,000 kilometers away. And the most crucial detail in the source text is that they had never met in person.
Not once.
Never even had a single video call.
It's a completely sterile environment. And for a manipulator who is deeply accustomed to getting his hands dirty in the emotional mud of face-to-face contact, this is terrifying territory.
He's completely stripped of his primary toolkit.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because this scenario struck right at the source code of his deepest narcissistic fears. I mean, people get caught in lies all the time.
Yeah, they usually just invent bigger lies.
Right. But he didn't just break down because his secret was exposed. He broke down because his universal, infallible deception system, the one that had worked on literally everyone else, just completely malfunctioned.
We really have to examine the mechanics of that malfunction, because this remote observer, separated by a 10,000 kilometer digital divide, was entirely immune to his dynamic calibration.
Because she wasn't physically there.
Right. She didn't have to endure his real-time emotional output. She couldn't see his manufactured sad expressions, couldn't hear the practiced quiver in his voice.
None of the theatrics transmitted over text.
Exactly. All those theatrical elements he used to distract targets just don't work over a text-based medium.
Let's visualize how this actually plays out practically. Like in person, He operates like a charismatic CEO, pitching a terrible startup to investors.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. He uses his hands, his energy, pacing the room to sweep you up in the vision so you don't look too closely at the balance sheet.
Yeah.
But this remote observer isn't sitting in the boardroom listening to the pitch.
Yeah.
She is a forensic accountant sitting in a quiet office, purely auditing the math and the ledger.
And the math does not care about his charisma.
No, it doesn't.
His lies worked perfectly in fluid verbal conversations because human memory is faulty and emotions run high, but they left massive, undeniable fractures when reduced to pure text and digital timelines.
She didn't need to listen to how he explained things. She just looked at the fixed, immutable timestamps.
Right. Because if he texts the counselor claiming he's in the hospital on a Tuesday, but his digital timeline shows a photo tag from a party at that exact time state,
In person, he could totally gaslight the counselor.
exactly, he'd claim they remembered the day wrong or act super offended that they're questioning his health.
But text is static.
A timestamp does not have feelings. It can't be gaslit. By removing the emotional face-to-face element, she shifted the conflict from this psychological game of cat and mouse to a cold, data-driven investigation.
In an argument, you rely on volatile memory. In text, the record is permanent.
Right.
He was still trying to play his usual game, though. He was trying to keep this international student in her own little information silo. But the sources indicate she just refused to stay there.
She broke right out.
She broke out and started cross-referencing everything.
She actively dismantled his compartmentalization strategy. She just began gathering the fragments he left behind across all these different platforms.
Just picking up the pieces.
Yeah, looking at the traces left by Big Boob Sister, analyzing digital data points regarding 045, mapping out his family structure from public social traces. She took all these scattered pieces he thought were safely isolated and stitched them together.
She basically built a complete face from the fragments.
Okay.
And the sources note it was a face he had never shown to anyone. Like a face he wouldn't even dare look at in a mirror himself.
Right.
There's this fantastic analogy in the source text for how she accomplished this. It says the manipulator is like someone who's highly skilled at tricking people into taking wrong turns while they are inside a maze with him.
Mm-hmm.
He bumps into you, points down a dark corridor, creates a distraction, and gets you all turned around. But the observer, she isn't in the maze at all. She is hovering in the air above it.
What's fascinating here is that she is operating on the meta level, or what the text calls the external observation layer.
The external observation layer.
Right. The liar's usual tools, the feigned grievance, the emotional pivoting, those only function if you are inside the maze, engaged in a reciprocal relationship with him.
You have to be playing his game on his board.
Exactly. But by hovering above the maze, she is completely detached from that interpersonal friction.
She isn't parsing his individual excuses to see if they sound believable. She is charting the mathematical architecture of the maze itself.
She's analyzing his behavioral patterns over time rather than judging his one-off statements. And this fundamentally breaks a core rule that pathological liars rely upon for survival.
Which is?
For him, the foundational premise of his life is, if I don't admit it, no one can prove it. Denial is his ultimate impenetrable shield.
Ah, the classic deny till you die strategy. As long as he never confesses, he thinks he maintains reasonable doubt.
But the observer's meta-level framework bypasses the need for a confession entirely. His behavior, the geometric pattern of his actions, the chronological timestamps of his texts, that data constitutes the conclusion.
Wow.
She doesn't need him to sit across from her and admit he lied. The data has already confessed on his behalf.
Which brings us to what might be the absolute most fascinating pivot in the entire analysis. The way his pathological lying, which had been his greatest asset for years, actually engineered his downfall.
Right.
Historically, his lying was his weapon. It was his primary survival tool to blur boundaries, escape accountability, manufacture sympathy.
In a physical space, the sheer volume of his lies acts as a defensive perimeter.
Wait, hold on though. Usually if someone is a fire hose of lies, doesn't that create a massive smokescreen? Like if he's constantly throwing out new narratives and characters, why didn't he just bury her in more lies?
That's a great question.
How does his endless pathological lying actually help the observer piece the truth together?
The difference lies entirely in the medium. When you analyze a pathological liar on a purely textual layer, the volume of lies actually becomes their undoing.
Because it's written down.
Right. In verbal conversation, a high volume of lies works because it overwhelms the listener's cognitive load. You get confused, you lose track, and the liar escapes in the confusion.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But in text, every single time he tells a new lie, he creates a permanent structural fracture. He creates a jump in the timeline that is logged and timestamped.
Because he can't retroactively edit the text he's already sent to other people on other platforms.
Exactly. He is generating conflicting data points.
Mhm.
So rather than creating a smokescreen, the massive volume of lies becomes a highly detailed map to his internal psychological structure.
Wow.
Every contradiction highlights exactly what he's trying to hide. The more he lied to try and cover his tracks with the remote observer, the more structural data he just handed her.
He thought he was throwing smoke bombs to obscure his escape, but he was literally dropping high visibility markers outlining his exact route.
It's incredible.
In a digital text-based environment, his weapons literally turned into his fingerprints.
Which is a profound realization for someone who truly believed they were invisible.
And once that realization hits him, once it dawns on this guy that he hasn't just been talking his way out of trouble, but leaving a permanent forensic trail everywhere, a frantic, futile panic sets in.
Yeah.
The sources detail his reaction, and it is a textbook psychological scramble.
He goes into full systemic panic mode. He starts frantically deleting photos, digital footprint, syncing platforms, just attempting to aggressively wipe the slate clean.
And he specifically targets very foundational elements. He goes after his high school diploma, childhood photos, details about his family structure. He is trying to burn the archive.
Yep.
But why those specific items? Like, why delete a high school diploma?
Because those items establish baseline reality. A high school diploma cements a specific geographic location and a graduation year.
Oh, right.
Childhood photos establish true family dynamics, revealing who is actually present and absent, which contrasts whatever fabricated tragic backstory he might have sold to 045 or Big Boob Sister.
Wow.
He's targeting those items because he realizes the observer is using them as anchor points to measure his lies against.
It is an incredibly tragic and almost comedic reaction. He finally understands, way too late, that he left an enormous volume of text behind. But by frantically deleting his photos now, he's only closing the display window of his store.
Right.
He's pulling the blinds down and locking the front door. But the observer has already been inside for weeks. She's taken inventory, copied the ledgers, and built the map.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, his delayed reaction highlights his ultimate fatal flaw. We can understand this through a psychological concept known as performance inertia.
Performance inertia. Okay, explain the mechanics of that. Why couldn't someone this adaptable just switch tactics when the environment changed?
Because his adaptability was an illusion, it was tied to a specific neurological loop. When someone is highly skilled at a task like manipulating people face to face, their brain creates incredibly strong, efficient neural pathways.
Okay.
He was constantly rewarded with dopamine hits every time his charm successfully diffused a physical threat. His brain learned that charm equals survival,
So it just became an automatic reflex.
a deeply ingrained reflex. He was so heavily conditioned to the mechanics of physical deception that he suffered from profound tunnel vision.
Right.
When the environment changed to digital, his brain still automatically reached for the physical tools. His inertia kept him acting as if he were on a physical stage, relying on emotional manipulation.
Completely forgetting he was trapped in a digital database where those tools mean nothing.
Exactly. He thought the lie simply vanished into the air the moment he finished typing it, just like when he spoke it in a room.
That's crazy.
He fundamentally misunderstood the medium. He wasn't defeated because the remote observer possessed some unfair, top-secret information advantage.
She didn't hack his phone or hire a PI.
No, she simply observed the public, fragmented data he carelessly left behind. He was defeated by his own over-reliance on his performance.
He brought theatrical tools to a data fight.
That is exactly it.
That perfectly encapsulates the entire collapse. We've been tracking the downfall of a manipulator who truly thought his architecture of deception was impenetrable. A guy who relied on reading micro-expressions, keeping everyone in strict, isolated silos.
An architecture entirely neutralized by someone who simply refused to enter the physical space. Someone hovering above his maze using his lies as a map.
It brings up a fascinating reality about the modern world for all of us, honestly. Whether we are master manipulators or just regular people trying to navigate life, we all put on performances, right?
They do. We curate a face for our family, a slightly different one for coworkers, another for friends. We all engage in mild information control.
But the digital fragments we leave behind, the texts, timestamps, geotags, social traces, they strip away the nuance of our physical performances.
Text is the ultimate neutral observer. It simply records the structural math of our behavior.
So what does this all mean? Well, as we've seen, when those records are viewed from a meta level, the truth of our behavioral patterns is kind of unavoidable.
It really is.
We started today by examining a clinical case of a pathological liar whose charm meant absolutely nothing against cold, hard data. So as you go about the rest of your day, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Yeah.
If a stranger were to completely remove your physical charm, your tone of voice, and your smile, and they only looked at the cold, static data fragments you leave behind across your digital life, what kind of map would they draw of you?